44-13. And when you win a game by that many points, and it's still not even indicative of how much of a blowout this really was, that's when you know you did something special. Just every facet of this game for the Hawks was working in this matchup. You had the offense, the defense, the special teams. The starters were out the first minute. It was respectable by NFL standards at the start of the fourth quarter. So no question about it. It is really a really special thing to see this game from the get-go. I mean, you get the Seahawks marching down, getting the touchdown. JSN with 2 catches on that drive, 41 yards in the touchdown. Then, of course, the play that really broke this open was the Torrey Horton punt and return for a touchdown. So that's really special to see that happen. And, of course, when you're talking about this Seahawks team, they're improving week by week, right? So week 1, they lose to the Niners. They come back and beat the Steelers on the road, and now they have a 31-point win. And again, it wasn't even that close over the New Orleans Saints, who maybe they're struggling at this moment, but let's not forget they are a team that absolutely played the Niners and the Cardinals pretty tough in their first 2 games of the season. So we're live now at Lumen Field in the immediate aftermath of this game. And I loved, if you were just watching KOMO News, I just caught up with Jaron Reed. He said, listen, we're excited about this, obviously, but it's already back to work for Arizona. And that is the business approach of this team. That is the way that they operate, all business, all the time. And, of course, it is a quick turnaround for that Arizona game. And that's another factor of this that is really critical to talk about, because if you think about it in that way, you've got a 4-day layoff. That's it. It's not the full week. The Seahawks are nursing a lot of injuries. And at the same time, even for guys that weren't hurt, they were able to rest so many of their stars in the second half with the game well in hand. 38 points in the first half, the 3rd most in franchise history. That's the kind of day it was for our Seattle Seahawks. Now, another thing I want to touch base on when it comes to this win is the idea that Torrey Horton is no longer a secret in the NFL. We saw him all through training camp. We knew how special he was going to be. I don't know if anybody foresaw what we saw in this game, but he was on a mission. 95-yard punt return in the first quarter, longest punt return for the Seahawks in that regard. But also, let's not forget, that is the first punt return for the Seahawks for a touchdown in 10 years. So that is, again, the kind of game that we saw. But he also is proving himself as that 3rd wide receiver, caught a touchdown pass from Sam Darnold. Really special game all around. Darnold was great. Didn't have to do a ton because the game was in hand. His defense was taking care of business. JSN was JSN. K9 maybe struggled to get some yardage, but he's got a couple touchdowns, moved the chains when he needed to, and then he started to warm up as things went on. So that was a really cool thing to see in that way as well. So where do we go from here? Well, the Hawks are 2-1. And that's a huge thing after that Week 1 loss. You almost lament what happened in Week 1 because they could be 3-0. But I think that shows what this team is about, that maybe that Week 1, everybody's still figuring things out, was more of an anomaly. And now moving forward, what we saw last week in Pittsburgh, what we saw today at Lumen Field, is what this team is going to be moving forward. So I think in that regard, pretty special to see as well. Let's talk about winning at Lumen Field. Heading into this, the Seahawks had only won 3 of their last 10 games here in the friendly confines of Lumen Field, yet they dominate the Saints 44-13. So that even is a step in the right direction. And moving forward, there's just a lot to like with this team. You can see everything's empty now. There's no more players and everything here. We're live, just kind of keeping your head on a swivel. A lot of seagulls around right now. So again, a big way to look at this all around in that regard. I want to talk about the defense, though, because, yeah, the Saints had 13, which, again, that's still a victory, right? But that touchdown was late when things were already well in hand. And I think that when you look at this unit, it's been awesome all season. Even in that Niners game that they lost, only held them to 17 points and had key turnovers that really gave the offense a chance to win this thing when maybe they shouldn't have, when the stats at least said otherwise. So the defense was great. Blocked field goal. We've seen a few blocked field goals now this year. The punt return for a touchdown. Really a lot to like from the defense and special teams, especially if you have the Seahawks defense and special teams in your fantasy team. So, there's not a ton to break down from the standpoint of everything worked. You can't leave this game desiring anything. Maybe you were hoping for the ground game to get a little more, maybe more carries, yards per carry, I should say. But at the end of the day, that's really kind of what the Saints' only thing that they have going for them. Their defensive line is pretty stout, even as this team struggles with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. Tyler Shuck got in there in the end. But again, that would maybe be the only thing that left something to be desired, is maybe generating more yards per carry. K9 did have most of the load today. Zach Charbonnet was out. And I think, you talk about injuries. that's another thing to talk about with this game is that the Seahawks defense was so thoroughly dominant without Julian Love, without Devin Witherspoon, without Nick Eamon-Worry, and yet the secondary stepped to the plate. To me, that's my biggest takeaway, is that this defense is so dominant that 3 starters, or at least guys that play starter-type minutes, plays, whatever you want to call it, without all those players, they still held this team to 13 points. And again, it was really less than that. They still had interceptions. They still had the key stops on 4th down. Again, a total domination when the Seahawks weren't even at their full strength. So I think that this is much more indicative, just like we said when they beat the Steelers last week, this is much more indicative of what this team is going to be moving forward. And so in that way, I think that's what you have to take from this. In a game that's otherwise, well, you dominated. You won in a blowout way. Well, the Saints aren't very good. This, that, and the other thing that I suppose are fair. But all in all, when you take a look at everything in this lens, it's like, okay, this is more like what this team will be moving forward. So they are 2-1 now, and they move on to Arizona. Short week, but it is a short week for both clubs. The Cardinals losing on a last-second field goal to the San Francisco 49ers. They're a weird team to try and figure out, too. They're going to be debuting their rivalry series jersey as they host the Seahawks Thursday Night Football just after 5 o'clock kickoff down in the desert. So that'll be another test for this team. Can you win 3 in a row? Can you go back on the road and win in a divisional game? And suddenly when you see how good this division is, the Niners look really good, undefeated. The Rams may have lost to the Eagles, but they're still going to be the Rams. They're still a very good team. So when you see how tight this NFC West is going to be, you need to get all those divisional wins that you can in that way. So that's what makes Thursday's matchup against Arizona really important. And if the Seahawks play like they did today, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, they should be able to win there and maybe even win handily. But again, you don't want to jump too far ahead. The Saints certainly came into here and had a lot of things going against them, namely that Seahawks defense. So I think that when you take it this way, you have to love what you saw from the Seahawks today. They've improved incrementally week by week, and I think this is much more indicative of the team. When I was talking with Jaron Reed, he said, listen, these guys are ready for this. The young guys especially have really stepped to the plate. You talk about a Torrey Horton. You talk about some of the guys on defense as well. This has the makings to be a special team. You don't want to declare that here in week 3 in September when we don't have our heavy winter coats on just yet, but you can start to see the signs. And if things continue to go in this way, we can point back to that Steelers win last week, continuing with the utter domination of the New Orleans Saints in this one as a reason why this team is going to make some noise moving forward. So the Hawks are 2-1 now. We have so much more coverage coming up all week on KOMO News again in this abbreviated week with a Sunday game and a Thursday game. We'll bring you everything the Seahawks are saying in the meantime, and arguably, most importantly, the injury updates to Julian Love, Nick Eamon-Worry, and Devin Witherspoon. Are they going to be able to play Thursday? I think that was the prevailing wisdom, is that you hold them out of this game so that they can play in that matchup. But again, we'll wait and see what Mike McDonald says coming out of this one, certainly as the week goes on, Monday and Tuesday moving forward. So the Hawks win it, 44-13, dominant win, one you feel good about. You can watch all the other games, Monday Night Football, and just be like, you know what, our Hawks won. Everything else is gravy at this point, and you can feel good about that moving forward. We're going to bring you more on this coming up on KOMO News throughout the week. Go Hawks, 2-1, maybe even a win streak this coming week.